right, guys, welcome back to the Command Your Brand Show. I'm your host, Josh Silvestro, brand ambassador of Command Your Brand, where we help CEOs and founders get on top-rated podcasts. In this episode, I actually have a very special guest who I had a chance to talk to about our services at Command Your Brand and how, he's helped a lot of people with financial advice, and what he does is he's just a very seasoned financial advisor. And I like to introduce you guys to Eric Miller, aka E-Money. So thanks for joining the show, man.
Pleasure.
Yeah. So I guess what we'll start off with is, so for people who don't know who you are and they kind of want to get to know you personally a bit, could you give us a little bit about your background and, about yourself and, where you come from?
Yeah, no problem. I'm a financial advisor, which, like I said before, sometimes people are equating them with almost like used car salesmen of the past, but I promise you that's not really the case. I've been doing this for 17 years. I am chief financial advisor of a registered investment advisor here in Clearwater, Florida.
Nice.
And really, I think our approach is, I want to make sure people understand and can win the money game. And unfortunately, we've seen a lot of people that just have this attitude like money is just too complicated of a subject that they can't understand. Yeah. And it's just because they don't understand the basics of it. So we spend a lot of time with our clients, educating them, really making sure they understand how money operates and what are the basic principles of it. And we just happen to specialize in working with business owners and healthcare owners because they have some pretty unique and special problems that maybe rank and file people don't have.
Interesting. And I guess for you, because you've dealt with so many people, like with clients, and you have almost 18 years of experience in this area. What do you find is the most common misunderstanding of, like, when they come to you, they're just like, I need help, and they don't know what's happening?
Yeah, I think right there, you said it the best. It's like, I need help. I'm not really sure what I need. And there's a lot of confusion. And that confusion stems from I don't knows. Most, like, I ask somebody, hey, like, so when are you going to be out of debt? Well, I don't know. How much does it take for your business to operate and run so that you're solvent and you can pay yourself? I don't know. What's your exit strategy of how you're going to divest yourself of this business, and when's that going to happen? I don't know. It's just a symptom, or just I don't knows, which is a symptom of confusion. When you have confusion, look, you can't build wealth on chaos,
right?
On a bed of chaos. Yeah. So it's like really making sure people understand their numbers, what those numbers are, and making sure you're not underestimating how much you need, which is a real big problem that a lot of people have, is the underestimation of how much you actually need in wealth.
Yeah. I know sometimes too I think it's kind of interesting that you mention that, is because I've definitely run into people who they kind of go in their business and they just have no idea what the numbers are with, like, they know how much they're making, and sometimes they know how much the business makes, but there's anything else is sort of like a mystery to them. And I feel like they just have no idea what to do in terms of getting the information or getting themselves like, under control of their finances. Like, what advice do you give to people to get your finances under control with that?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is never expect that you're just going to have a profit at the end of the month. You have to plan for that. And what a lot of people will just go through, and not just their business, but their household. It's like, well, I make so much and I spend so much, and then I look to see what's left over. Well, if you do that long enough, pretty soon you're going to find that there is nothing left over.
Yeah.
Because you're not actually planning to have excess. And, one of the fundamental flaws I think most people have is they don't plan to have excess because they don't look at those excesses, whether they're business profits, whether they're household, reserves. They don't look at them as necessities. They look at them as, oh gosh, I hope that they're there. And a hope and pray is not a strategy make sure that you retain your profits.
Yeah.
So there's some things you can do to make sure that those things, don't occur.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating thing, is like they never actually know what they have at the end of the month. It's just sort of like, I hope I have enough to where I can feed everybody and just pay everyone and make sure my business is alive. So I think that's a very interesting point you made about that.
A lot of people do it. They do it every single day. It's probably 90% of business owners operate that way. Big corporations don't operate that way. Private equity groups don't operate that way. People that have most of the money don't operate that way. But unfortunately, 90% of businesses and business owners, small businesses operate that way, which is one of the reasons why they stay small.
Yeah. And I know also too, you've written a book called The How to Become a Financial Beast. I know that was one of your
Mhm.
books that you had. What do you find is like the core principles that you think would help people achieve, financial independence? Maybe in a business or themselves or whichever.
Yeah, there's a couple of them. I think one of them is pretty simple. We touched on that, which is, make sure that you don't underestimate what you actually need and know what that number would be, is just as a first target. Second one would be like, understand the basics of money. There's three skills you have to be good at: know how to acquire it, know how to control it, know how to expand it. We call it the ACE Triangle.
I see.
So if any one of those 3 points you are deficient at or you need help on, then you need to make sure that you go find the skill set to do it. But it's just, how can I acquire money? Am I in the right industry to acquire money? Or am I in a dead industry, which nobody's paying money for anyways? Can I control money? Do I know when a dollar comes in? Do I know where that dollar is going to be allocated to create more money for myself? And then how do I expand it? When I get the money, when I do have excess, am I putting it in places that's going to create, other income sources for me? That's really it. I do those three things, you're going to win the game of money.
Yeah, I think it's I think it's the subject of finances and just money in general is made so complicated that people just give up because it's sort of like, I look at an example of like, and I've told this to people on the podcast where there's just like taxes, for example, it's just like a unknowable thing. There's just so many things that you just don't know about and how to deal with and what to do, what not to do. And this people just give it up entirely and they just let somebody else do it. And I think it's like, even with finances, it's just like that, where like you just give it to somebody, they do it for you, and that's kind of it. And they don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, and I don't think I'm ever asking anybody to be an expert in advanced accounting principles, but you should know where your money is going,
Yeah.
and you should have a good handle of what your expenses are, where that money is going, and most importantly, what it's going to take to create an excess.
Mhm.
Most people operate just like this. Like, I bring so much in, so much goes out, and that's just a recipe for long-term failure. You can't operate that way.
Yeah. One thing I noticed too is a lot of private, business owners or just private practice owners actually, they struggle with the actual, getting the income of their own business because they only focus on either just one type of business or one type of flow of income. What do you think are some steps that people might have? Like, is it like, should they have multiple streams of income, or should they just focus on one, or how do you think that should work?
So if you own a business, within that business, obviously you just can't deliver one service. You have to have, multiple services that you deliver. But I will say that you'll always hear people say, hey, you need to create multiple income sources. And that's not untrue, but
Yeah.
it's the sequence in which you're doing it. I think first and foremost, get one going and get it flowing like the Mississippi, and really getting it to a position where, wow, this thing is really flowing a lot of money, and where I've created excess. And then from that excess, then you can start creating, other income sources. But I'll have people that, are doing, you know, I don't know, 25,000 a month in business revenue, or $50,000 a month in business revenue, and are like looking to like go find other income sources. I'm like, you need to fix this
Yeah.
first, get this up to 100,000 a month at least, and then take 20,000 of that, and then we'll go create some other income sources.
Yeah.
But that's the sequence. Get one going, flowing like the Mississippi at first, and then you can start, creating other sources from there.
Yeah. And what do you think, and just as a bit, you've helped a lot of people with a lot of this stuff with, generating and helping with their finances. Do you think that it's like, I'm sure you've often said like, never worry about money again. What are there like any fail safes for financial strategies that are made possible, or is it just like, something that they should just rely on one stream of income for?
Well, no, I mean, financial security is kind of a bit of a fallacy, because you're really never secure. I mean, there's the things that it's static. It's not static. Financial security is not static, right? I mean, it takes a lot of courage. It takes, skill and competency. I mean, if you have those things, you're going to have security, because if you can do, and so I just translate in the financial world, if you have the skills of money, if you're competent in what you do, you really should never have to worry about money again.
Right.
But I think that's, everyone's like just rushing to get to like, oh, I just need $2 million or $5 million or $8 million. I don't know if that's really the game or not. I think the game is creating something where you don't have to have all of your time and attention to do it. And then being able to take something that has produced income and, having that create other income sources for you seems to me like that's more of the game that people should play.
Yeah. I know also too, what's interesting is that, people, especially in the workforce, that people, they want to focus on like, oh, I want to have a retirement fund. I need to put money there. So there's a retirement. So when I retire, there's money there. Like,
Yeah.
and there's like a traditional way to do it. And it's like kind of like failing, I find. Like, it's not really a thing that people want. They just want a stream of income where they can kind of make. What do you find is like you know, uh, is it like an alternative strategy that you recommend to secure like a very, tight retirement? Or like, do you think that's even a thing, or should we keep doing that, or what?
I mean, look, I think the what's been most people's plan of retirement has been like 401ks and IRAs and those kinds of things. Now, okay, how much money are in those accounts? Well, if you do a quick Google search, you'll probably find that there's probably $6 or $7 trillion of money that are in those accounts. Okay, now why? Why is there so much money in those accounts? Well, I can argue with people all day long about like whether or not, because you'll hear 401k is a scam, or, retirement plans are a scam. And I'm like, I don't know what makes them a scam. Certainly there is corruption that could occur, but here's what happened. The money never got to that person's paycheck. Okay. And it got separated out into another account. And if you understand that one of the rules of money is that the only way you're ever going to create an excess or a reserve pool is that you have to physically separate that money out from where you typically operate, you will create reserves. That's why there's so much money in 401ks, because people never got access to the money to spend, right?
Right.
Remember, people will spend everything that they make. That is a natural. Look, I mean, look, all this talk about Doge, and we're finding all these inefficiencies in government and everything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, look at what happens when you give a group control over the finance lines. They will do insane things.
Yeah.
Absolutely insane things, to the tune of spending things that you're just like, where's this money going? Okay. So the headlines can teach you a lot about money right now.
Yeah.
Okay. One person needs to be in control of the finances of a household.
Right.
And you have to make sure that you have absolute control of that money. Otherwise, it will just get spent and it will disappear.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that you mentioned that, was because there's just so much, and I think funny enough is like there's just so much things going on with money, especially with people in their own houses or their own business, that sometimes there's things that get neglected, and there's points where there's too much control over something, and all of a sudden it's just like you have no idea where your money goes, because it's just there's things that are coming in, and then you don't know what's over there, what's being spent, and it's kind of, that's why I think one person should probably run the whole thing. I think that's,
They have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't have a committee running the finance. If people try to do that, I can tell you right now, you are flying in the face of natural law, because a group of people are insane when it comes to money. And you have to have, it's a one person job to make sure that you're solvent. It's just a one person gig. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I know you mentioned this before. I forget if it was either on the podcast or maybe a little earlier. You were mentioning about, talking about, acquiring, controlling, and expanding your wealth. Like you're really just trying to do that. Like I know some people have misconceptions and like ideas about how that actually is and what the principles are for that. But I think it's like, how do you think these people who kind of have like the weird or off mindset about that, what do you think, what needs to change with that so people can do that?
I think they just have to understand that money is a representation of you delivering something that other people find valuable.
Mhm.
And if you don't understand that part right there, you call it exchange, you can call it giving, value to somebody, whatever you want to call it. Okay. That's where money really comes from. Okay.
Mm.
Is like you're able to do that. So people get away from that. They think they can just, well, I can just make money, trading crypto, or I can just make money, doing something else. And you know what? Unfortunately, um, this would be a good question for Jeremy, since he's like the ancient Rome kind of
Yeah.
guy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
On the last vestiges of an empire, typically you will find wild speculation occurring, especially when it comes in the area of the money. And I can't think of a better time right now that defines the amount of wild speculation that we have going on right now. It
Yeah.
will revert back to the mean, but I think people have to go back to, look, I have to be valuable. I have to be competent. I have to do things that are productive. And if I do those things, even though I see all my friends out there making millions of dollars doing this, I'm going to be rewarded at some point in time, because I'm doing things that are actually ethical and
Right.
are producing value for somebody else.
Right. What since you've obviously spoken to a lot of these people, what are some misconceptions people have about, growing money or wealth or anything like that? Because, I find that I feel like if people still have these misconceptions, they can't really make that money. And I feel like there's a lot of misconception out there about how to actually make it, or, building wealth,
Well, I think a lot of people think that, like, the quote unquote the 1% are actually evil, no good doers that are stopping them. I think that's one thing people have to get over, is like there isn't this band of people that are trying to acquire everything. It's a very small percentage of people. I mean, it's like probably less than 100 people that are
Wow.
actually doing something like that. So you just got to get over that idea that money is like somehow gonna corrupt them. It's not. It's virtuous, it's righteous, it is ethical for you guys to have money, and you deserve to have money. So that's the first thing I tell most people, and once you overcome that fact, then you'll go see, okay, what are people doing now to create something that I would want, and copy a lot of the things that they're doing.
Yeah.
But you just got to get over the misconception that it's not something that is virtuous, which it is. It actually is.
Yeah. It's so interesting. Like, just, I don't know, for some reason, like, a lot of times when we talk or discuss about financial or even just other subjects, it's like you become more and more interested about what's happening. And it's cool because, like, you get to talk to people who actually really know the subject, and it builds understanding of how finances really work in the day-to-day world. Because
Yeah.
I've definitely had mistakes where I've done, I'm sure have done this too, where we go out in the world and we make money mistakes, and it's like we actually learn from our mistakes, and we actually get to talk about it and really learn from what has happened. So I kind of really appreciate that, and learning the correct ideas and concepts of, like, how do I build money, how do I control it, how do I acquire money and wealth, and things like that. So, and I know you're the host of your own podcast, which is called the Financial Beast Podcast, right?
Yeah, we have How to Become the Financial Beast podcast. We
Yeah.
go over a lot of principles for healthcare owners on those three things right there: how to better acquire it, how to make sure they control it, how to expand it, how to make sure they exit and go out at the top of their game.
Yeah.
So we'll touch on a lot of those subjects in our podcast.
Yeah. What for you, because I know you've hosted that show for a bit. What trends or reoccurring things have come up that it's like, wow, like, people, for your eyes, they're kind of liking more than most, like, what
I
do you
think
find?
Yeah, I mean, the subject of retirement always seems to be a pretty popular one. I'm finding exiting is definitely another popular one as well. People have, a lot of business owners are very, very concerned about how they're going to exit out of their practice or their
Wow.
business in general at some point in time. It's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't have a strategy. I mean, do I just sell it to my number one guy, or is there a bigger group out there that I can sell it to? What's it worth? How do I increase the value of it? How much am I going to depend upon this thing for my retirement? All kinds of questions.
Wow. Interesting. And what do you think is like, because obviously people are worried and scared about their exit plan and what entails in the future, right? So like, what do you find uh, for like I don't know. I don't know. Obviously, everyone's different with their resolutions and what they want to do. Like, what do you find would be the
Mhm.
like for people to exit, a business like that? What do you think people should do with that?
Well, two things. You have to understand your emotional readiness and your financial readiness. Are you emotionally ready to go do something else? Do you have another game that you want to play? Because the worst thing that happens is when someone exits their business. Or, you run a business, you're going 180 mile an hour. All of a sudden, it goes down to 5 mile an hour. That's going to mess with people's heads quite a bit when you do that. Second thing is the financial readiness. When you own a business, the sale proceeds are never going to match what you're taking out of that business to pay for your lifestyle. Okay. Very rare that would happen. So you have to make sure, like, hey, once I sell this thing, am I going to have enough to be able to do the things I want to do and live how I want to live? And, those are very important questions. So once you get those two things established, now you can start looking at what's my strategy? Who am I going to sell to? How do I want to structure this? What's the tax ramifications? All those other things. But it really comes down to your emotional readiness and your financial readiness. And those are two things that I would encourage everyone to make sure that they work on and understand.
I think if I was a business owner, I would be emotionally scared to sell my business.
Yeah.
'Cause I could understand, like, it's just such a worrisome thing where, like, you have a business and when you sell it, it's like, oh, will it succeed after that? Because you run it a particular way and you know how it rolls. And you give it to somebody who maybe just doesn't know, or, I think there's a lot of fears in regards to selling your own practice and how to
I
do
don't
it.
know. $25 million check will make sure a lot of fears go away,
That's true. That is very true.
And I think you'd be surprised on the whole thing about the legacy and I've asked that question. I was like, to a lot of business owners, like, hey, is the legacy of the business really, really important to you? And honestly, what a lot of them say? It's like, after I sell it, it's theirs.
Yeah.
It's theirs. They bought it. They can run it how they want to. Very few of them. Then have been some that have, been disappointed of what's become of it. But for the most part, most of them are like, I checked out. I'm done. It's on them right now.
Yeah. It's such a, interesting game. It's like a really interesting game to play where you have to build your own business to like really get to a point where you want to sell it. And I find that people, at some point want to, because I'm sure when they get older, I don't know if you've had this experience where, as they get to a certain age, you're like, oh, I don't want to work anymore. I'm done running my business. I want to like just hand it off to someone or sell it even, when I know people sometimes when they sell it, they obviously want some type of, I guess, some exchange when they sold it or something that will, they'll also somehow make money with as it progresses, right? Or do you
Yeah.
find to just sell it all completely?
No, a lot of people will generally either sell it to another group where they stay involved for a period of time, which is fine. Some people want to work inside the business for a little while. Most of them don't want to do that after they sold it because you're not used to being an employee now when you were the boss for a period of time.
Yeah.
But it really just depends on what you want for your lifestyle at that point. There's a lot of stress running a business. So I get why people want to sell out at some point in time. It makes total sense.
Yeah.
But you just can't do it too soon.
Right.
And you can't do it in a condition where you're defeated or burnt out. That's the worst time to sell your business. You really want to make sure like you're on top, or the business is really running well and you're really like happy like with how the business is. That's the time to sell, not when it's you're stressed out because you're doing all the work. That's the worst time to sell.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you on that. And then do you think on a different subject, do you think that, collaboration in fighting, like, do you think collaboration with, with other people or anything involving your business, do you think that there's a financial success in terms of that? Like when you collab with people or your other practices or anything like that, do you think they actually, there's some financial success with that?
There can be.
Yeah.
It all depends on the goals and purposes that the two people have. I mean, I've seen a lot of partnerships in my tenure. Some of them have went all right. I mean, I'm in a partnership, but I also had a
Yeah.
really bad partnership.
Yeah.
So I've seen it both ways.
Yeah.
And collaboration with people, I've seen it. I mean, I've done it, in some capacity, but everybody else, has an agenda, and they
Right.
have their own agenda, and you just have to make sure that it doesn't conflict with what you're doing, or pull you away from what your original kind of postulate was of your business.
Right.
And that's easy to happen. I'm sure people have collaborated and have made a lot of money, but I've also seen it, like, after that initial honeymoon phase,
Yeah.
more often than not, I've seen it turn contentious. I've seen it turn acrimonious. I've seen it turn legal. And it's just like, okay, was it worth it in the end to do that?
Right. That's true. And so I guess before we end off, I'm just curious because I'm always wanting to know, like, people you've helped and like people that you've helped and you feel like, wow, those are such a great success for other people. Could you name like one or two times where like you've helped someone like you, like that changed that person's life with your service?
Oh yeah, I can name, a number of them. I
Yeah.
think one of my favorite ones, this was a doctor in Minnesota. He came to us. This guy had no problem. He had a multi-practice. He was doing millions and millions of dollars of revenue in his business, but he could not control money worth a lick. I mean, it just went everywhere. And he would invest in the most unusual, like, private investment deals that he had he had the most incredible success ratio on those private placements, which was zero. He had
Wow.
zero success on any of those.
Wow.
And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You're making all this money and you have nothing to show for it.
Yeah.
So we got him to, like, really, say, hey, look, boring works sometimes. Okay. You don't need to get too extravagant. And for about 5 years, I really got him to focus on, a few of these things. Corrected some of his, how he was channeling money into different places. And, he sold his business at that, like, all this stuff happened to him that was good because he was doing correct actions. So after 5 years, he sold his business for like $10 million. He had money. He was a success story, and he was so happy afterwards. He's like, I don't know that it ever would have happened if you didn't come in there and just kick me in the butt
Yeah.
and, put some correct systems and sanity in my finances that allowed me to be able to enjoy, the fruits of my labor.
Yeah.
And that was probably one of my favorite stories right there. Um, you know, I have a dozen more, but for sake of time, I guess we can stick with
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah. Okay, good, man. And then lastly, because I really want people to actually go to you and like, ask you questions and get to, because I'm a big believer in collaboration and like people connecting with each other. Is there people, I know you also have a gift too in terms of what you want to give away. Is there like a place that we can actually like that? Is there just like for you too?
Yeah, so you can go to wealthforpracticeowners.com, wealthforpracticeowners.com. We got a free download let me see if I get this right, how to harness the power of your practice and grow your net worth. So we'll have that as a giveaway if you go to wealthforpracticeowners.com.
Awesome. That's really amazing. I really love the collaboration. I love people who can reach out to you and just get to know who you are and like what you do. Because I'm sure a lot of us, business owners and people who want to build a business always want financial help and advice of what to actually do next. So I really appreciate the time you kind of given us to really just be an amazing guest and just really asking a lot of questions about financial services and what we do and just the mindset we need to have with finance. Because I think there's a lot of misconception out there. And I think just knowing what you know is very much appreciated, just that you explained and just tell us what that was. That was awesome. So thank you.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right, buddy.
Yeah. So I really appreciate also everyone here who is listening to this. If you guys like this stuff, please like and subscribe to this and definitely check us out. And if you also want to check out Eric Miller, you can definitely check in our description of what he does. And also maybe you want some financial services. So definitely check him out. And of course, if you guys like this stuff, again, please like and subscribe. And, Eric, it was a pleasure talking to you.
I appreciate it, Josh. Be well, man.